Come and knock on our door. We've got some stories to share. Three's a crowd, but what would Three's Company be without the easy chemistry between its leads? Especially the one woman who was there from the start, Joyce DeWitt. But how nasty did her feud with co-star Suzanne Somers get? Did the two ever seriously make up? The truth gets pretty intense.
That's the act of a very desperate person.
I'm your host, Nostalgic Nick, with the inside scoop on Joyce DeWitt, including the harsh realities of Hollywood that sent her fleeing Tinseltown. If you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up to help it circulate, and subscribe to our channel so you can come dance on our floor again. Now, without further ado, let's get to it. How old was Joyce DeWitt in Three's Company? Joyce DeWitt had this whole acting thing pretty figured out early in life, beginning on the stage when she was only 13 years old. Then she earned a bunch of acting fellowships and scholarships. A popular myth says she was mentored by Abe Vigoda, but unfortunately, Joyce has confirmed that the two never actually met. Her TV debut was on an episode of Beretta, but she would be in her late 20s before she finally landed her career-defining role as Janet Wood in Three's Company.
One false move and we take you right to the vet.
Even though Joyce would become an absolutely inseparable part of this show, her place in the cast wasn't a foregone conclusion. John Ritter's character was originally named David Bell and was an aspiring filmmaker. But Three's Company's second pilot, this one fronted by producers and writers behind All in the Family and the Jeffersons, it featured actress Susan Lanier and one lady named Joyce DeWitt, were getting warmer. But properly for this show, third time's a charm, and the next pilot was the one that stuck. Though some big changes were made, getting cast in that second unaired pilot played a crucial role in Joyce getting the final part of Janet Wood. Why did Joyce DeWitt miss an episode of Three's Company? Joyce DeWitt and John Ritter were the biggest constants in Apartment 201, but out of 172 episodes, Joyce missed 2. So why? Three's Company was a bit of a crowd with too many cooks. Clashes with the producers were pretty common, with the most infamous involving Suzanne Somers. But Joyce too had a disagreement or two with the higher-ups concerning her salary and when they wanted to retract a raise they promised. And this conflict lasted long enough that Joyce had already been thrown off schedule. So they wrote a different plot into the script and introduced the character of Jack's girlfriend, Linda, played by the talented Anne Skadine. Pretty much all of Linda's lines were originally meant for Joyce.
That's illegal, Mr. Roper.
It is?
Yeah. Isn't that like wiretapping?
The plot lines that ensued are pretty divisive to this day, with some fans still scratching their heads over some of the choices made, specifically about when Jack acts platonic versus romantic with the ladies. Did Joyce DeWitt and Suzanne Somers have a falling out? The Somers vs. Three's Company feud is pretty famous, but just how does Joyce fit into all of this? Well, everyone could see plain as day that Ritter was the favorite golden child. The way Joyce saw it, she and Somers needed to be a united front. And she even warned Somers they had to stick together, because apart individually, one of them could be fired. But as a single allied unit, they held more weight.
Well, I guess this is it. I guess so.
So, when Somers dug her heels into the ground for a salary equal to John's, Joyce DeWitt was not thrilled. Looking back, telling her story, Somers says the whole crew put out this image of her as someone trying to ruin the show. When Somers feigned injuries to avoid appearing in episodes, both Joyce and Ritter stopped talking to her. For DeWitt, this was the highest she'd ever flown, and she didn't feel like she had room to test the waters and tempt fate. She would later explain she needed that money, whatever assured money she could get. She couldn't afford negotiating for something higher, she just needed some security. What happened to Joyce DeWitt on Three's Company? Celebrity fame caught this small-scale stage actress a bit off guard, but DeWitt stuck with the role of Janet through thick and thin, even though her pay was definitely way less than John Ritter's. The Somers conflict created a huge rift in the cast. But Joyce was, above all else, very protective of Janet, and to this day looks back on her time as Janet Wood with great pride. Joyce has revealed, quote, "I loved playing Janet, and I did fight hard to play her the way I wanted to play her. Today, women, even younger viewers, come up to Joyce and thank her for being so inspiring on the show. A lot of Janet's greatness comes from the choices she made, not the producers. And honestly, in spite of them. In one episode, Chrissy is repeatedly mistaken for a prostitute, like a friend of hers.
No! This is my first time!
And at one point, the script had the friend call Chrissy priceless, and Janet responds, quote, "And she's going to stay that way." Joyce hated the idea of Janet saying that line, believing it being too judgmental, especially since earlier in that episode, she was perfectly fine with the prostitute friend. Ritter, who completely agreed with Joyce, offered to say it instead to not compromise Janet's character, but executives kept it as Joyce's. Well, jump to rehearsal, the producer asked her what her problem with the line was. She leaned back in her chair and said, quote, "Mickey, I'll tell you what the deal is with this line. You can come out with a gun during the 5:30 show and hold it to my head, and I still won't say that line for you. Is that clear enough?" Well, it was clear enough, and that sure did the trick.
Isn't she priceless?
Yes, she is, and she's gonna stay that way.
Way to stand your ground, Joyce. Did Joyce DeWitt and Suzanne Summers ever reconcile? It would be 3 decades before Joyce and Summers spoke to each other in earnest again. In that time, rumors circulated that things got pretty harsh between the cast. One story goes the crew threw a fake funeral for Summers after she left. The season 5 episode, Dying to Meet You, has Jack in a coffin playing dead.
What am I, Jack in the Box?
Well, at one point, the crew rolled out the casket and had Summers' distinctive blonde side ponytail hanging out of it. True story, I think. A ton of cast members have confirmed it. Thankfully, that ended in 2012 on an episode of Suzanne Somers Breaking Through. There, everyone was able to calmly tell their side of the story, offer heartfelt apologies, and reminisce over the late, great John Ritter. Joyce was also apologetic after she heard Summers out and said, quote, "We had very different approaches to our careers. We had very different needs. I did not have a child that I was supporting on my own. I didn't have a business head, so I didn't understand someone who did." Why did Joyce DeWitt stop acting? Playing Janet Wood was certainly Joyce's biggest acting credit, with nothing else after Three's Company putting her in the main cast. And it's worth noting, she was not asked to come back for Three's a Crowd, a decision that would actually hurt quite a bit. Executives were gearing up for something else with the franchise, but they were only bringing John Ritter. When the big news came in the form of a magazine headline that Ritter was already setting up his next gig in the Three-verse, and Joyce was not in the loop, she felt betrayed that Ritter never said anything, that John was told not to. It was a difficult blow and a harsh end to a huge part of her career. After that, all her TV work were usually one-off episodes or TV films, with a few small feature films scattered in. She talked about her problems with Hollywood in that 2012 episode of Summers' talk show. She said, quote, "I saw Hollywood and the way it behaved, and it was not a moral code that was natural to me. If this was the way the game was played, I wasn't sure I wanted to play it." She hasn't completely disappeared though, appearing in the 2022 film Ask Me to Dance. But mostly she has returned to the stage. In recent years, she appeared in a Waffle House themed play that was shown virtually because of the shutdown. Entirely free, just to connect with and uplift people through that difficult time. And I think that's pretty Waffle House cool.
I don't know how he eats it.
It was a bumpy ride, and a quiet stage actress found herself having to choose her battles, protect her character, contend with the spotlight, and deal with betrayal. But to this very day, Joyce DeWitt loves Three's Company, Janet, and their legacy, saying, quote, "I never imagined that all these years later people would remember me because they remember her. But I am delighted. If I had to leave a calling card, I would happily leave that character." Alright, that's enough of me. Now we need to hear from you. How was your visit? Did you learn anything new? Who was your favorite of the Three's Company tenants? Did you prefer Stanley Roper or Don Knotts' Ralph Furley? Get in the comments and tell me all things Three's Company. If you enjoyed our deep dive, please give this video a thumbs up to show us some support. Subscribe to our channel so you never miss a memory. And from all of us here at Do You Remember, I want to thank you very much for watching.